Civil War. That's right, folks. We're talking the new film from Alex Garland that just had the biggest opening weekend for any A24 released movie, which is kind of cool to see. This feels to me like one of the first truly interesting films to talk about of the year. Now, I like talking about other films that have come out this year. Dune Part 2 is probably another big one, but that feels universally beloved. So there's not much to like sink your teeth into. I think another one that's exciting to talk about is something like Monkey Man or Late Night with the Devil, two movies I've also talked about on this channel. But Civil War is divisive and it's mixed, and some people really like it. Some people don't like it at all. Some people are right there in the middle. And I love that experience. I love a movie that can divide people with its clear intention of doing that. And that is pretty much everything that Alex Garland has done as a filmmaker. His films have been pretty interesting. Ex Machina, fantastic. Annihilation, fantastic. Men, I think is fantastic. I liked Men more than a lot of people. I've talked about that movie numerous times. It's very interesting. And then Civil War, on paper, you're like, oh, this doesn't really fit into like the lexicon that we've known Garland to create. He's very more like horror and science fiction, looking at like these deeper aspects of like humanity and like our self-destructive tendencies and the things that make us afraid. And then if you really think about that, that's kind of what Civil War is about. I liked this movie. I liked thinking about this movie. I liked the way I left the theater, I left the cinema with a specific feeling in mind, and that's a cool thing that I have yet to experience this year. This is not my favorite film of the year, but this is the first time I left a cinema in 2024 being like, you know what? This is staying with me. What this movie is making me think and feel is not something I've had happen yet. So that's a really cool thing to experience. And I think there's a lot of like misconceptions about this film going into it. The trailer that they initially show does not like show you the specific tone that's going on in this film. It's more of like, catching the highlights of the big moments to like give you a sense of like the anarchic nature that we're seeing here. But that's not really the film. There is a clear narrative. It's less of a vibes movie and more just it's a road trip movie. We're going from one destination to another. There are events that happen along the way, and then we're just showing you like a world depicted in a way that we don't normally depict in America. And that's why this is very interesting for a number of reasons. You have a filmmaker who's not American. He is coming to this from a different perspective than somebody who is American, so maybe that gives it its specific edge that feels different. Now, saying that, there are going to be people who aren't happy with depictions in this movie, and I completely get that. I'm from Canada. I don't know all of the legality of the shit going on in the United States at any given moment. I'm also coming to this from an outsider perspective, but I'm well aware of the tensions and the rising stuff going on. And I'm pretty much aware of who the president in this is a send up of. If you don't want to look for that parallel, it's very easy to miss, but just the idea of like, you know, going nuclear the moment things aren't going particularly your way. There's an American president in recent history who has that spirit. So this is a very interesting movie. And a problem with that is, for some extent, for whatever reason, you might want to say, Hollywood is this particularly left-leaning artistry. Like, a lot of the people in Hollywood tend to be a certain way. They're very specific in that intention. So you'd have the dilemma that this movie is going to lean a certain way. The other dilemma is, if it leans too much the other direction, some people are going to feel a certain way about that stuff. This movie, for the most part, tries to stay neutral. Now, I don't think Alex Garland is a neutral man. I do think he has his opinions and his feelings. But what I will say is that being centrist or neutral on all this stuff is in itself a political stance. And just the act of making a movie is a political stance of some sort. So the fact that the neutrality of the main characters in the world they are experiencing is what we are seeing, that is the intention of the filmmaker, and that in itself is the stance of the filmmaker. This isn't him trying to say he's one thing or the other. It's him specifically showing you the neutrality, the centrism of that event and these people. And that is gonna be a hard pill to swallow if you're not willing to accept that. Because if you want to see it being said as a certain person and a certain type of person as being portrayed a certain way, you'll find that. But our main four characters, they are not people who are presented as either left or right. They are presented as this non-binary being that exists outside of the spectrum of the political governments. They are not beings with their politics. They have their feelings and their thoughts, but that's not what that's about. And this movie is not about politics. It's really not. It's there if you want to see it because that's the backdrop. But it's more about journalism and like what does it mean when like the thing you thought you were doing to protect your world actually doesn't do anything about it. It's a very interesting take. Now, I've seen other critics talk about this, kind of just like how this movie presents America in a way it's never been presented before, which is like presenting it like it's a foreign country. And it's like presenting America the way America presents other countries that are at war. And when I heard that, I heard that before I went into it. And that's a really honest take about what we're seeing here. Because this isn't America presented as America normally presents itself. This is divided, it's broken, but it's also just about living in that dystopia and that destruction, which is what so many other countries currently, right now, at the time of this video being recorded and in your eyes for you to see. There are countries that are like this. There are places in the world that have this destruction where it either tore itself apart or outside forces are tearing it apart, and it's trapped there. And presenting America like that is not something we do. And I love just like the feeling throughout the most of this where it's like you don't think about it till it comes to your shores, till it's right there for you to experience. And that's throughout this entire piece. And the act of this movie is watching a bunch of characters who are in journalism, different aspects of it, some for print, some for online, some just for photography, just trying to capture this horrific event the way they would capture something if they were overseas. And that is a really interesting way to present this because we have not truly seen America presented like this before. And as somebody who loves journalism, I did go to school for journalism. I love journalism. I love photojournalism. I really liked the invasive nature that these photographers have for this. They are just there. And I love how like the press is just kind of like this voyeuristic being throughout this entire war where it's like, well, nobody's really against you, but we also aren't treating you like a friend or an enemy. You're just kind of this thing that exists out there. Some people will be with you, but it's just kind of where you end up. That's what side you're on. And I think that's a really honest portrayal of what journalism should be. Let's take the politics stuff out of this. If this is a movie that's about journalism in a broken country, then what we are presented with is a pretty good interpretation of how you should handle it. It's less about the specific side that you're trying to like make like the villain or the hero or whatever, and it's more just these are the events that are happening and have happened. If we want to figure out how this got to be where it is, you have to go to the direct source, which is the person in charge that caused this. So the movie, and I don't think this is much of a spoiler, the movie is about our journalists trying to get to Washington, D.C. so they could have the interview with the president. Why would you send drone strikes on your own people? Why would you allow these things to happen? Why would you recognize certain states as like a different coalition and that kind of stuff? And that is very interesting. And that is something we don't see in American films about America. That's how they'd portray the guys over there. And the earnestness of doing that here is very interesting. And I like that. And you mix that with just like the beautiful cinematography and color choices that Alex Garland is known for. Like, it looks amazing. He knows how to give you a very dystopian feeling. He knows how to hold on a shot for a long time. He picks some really interesting song choices in this film. Things you're not expecting, but you're like, this is just showing you the mundanity of everything going on, how this is just how people live now. There's just fighting breaking out all over the place. There's just things happening all over the place, but you just got to see it, and that's what happens. It's very dystopian, but very honest at the same time. And it definitely feels in tone with a lot of like the other works we have seen from Garland. Like, it has the same energy as something like Annihilation and Men, which are movies that just depict like nothing is really good and trying to find like a sliver of goodness in what you have left could be something, but when you look around you, everything's destructive. How can you really be happy? And it portrays that so well. It is definitely a bigger budget for him, which you love to see. And he's just like, I'm going to take these moments to truly do something big budgeted. There's going to be some insane action sequences. There's going to be some insane just camera work to depict these beautiful things. Just the two contrasting opinions of like, here's somebody who is broken, who has to just report on the truth happening around them. Now it's getting personal, mixed with like the giant tanks and helicopters moving all around them, just right to like destroy the world. It is just the best of both of that. Just like the intimacy that Garland loves with the bigger budget that he can play bigger stuff with. That is really cool. And then you have a very fascinating cast who are doing some cool stuff. Kirsten Dunst, we talked about her very recently, is a very interesting lead for a movie like this because she could, if you want her to go big, I'll say this, she can go big, but she is subdued this entire movie. She is very monotone, very stiff in everything, and that's the point, where she, more than anybody, has the arc of, I don't know why we're still doing this. Like, I'm looking outside at fires burning and gunshots surrounding me, and I'm starting to wonder, what are we doing? What is the lesson that humanity has learned, that America has learned, that anybody has learned, if this is what's going to keep happening? And you juxtapose that with Kylie Spaney, who is like the young up-and-coming reporter who wants to like be a part of this, but doesn't know what she's getting herself into. It's really cool to see that. And Wagner Moura is just, oh, he's so cool. You just love to see him. This dude has so much energy. He's so entertaining. He's kind of just like, I don't know what the right way is, but the energy he presents is just the perfect kind of broken man where you're like, I'm just used to this. I know nothing else but this, and I've accepted that. It's about the report. It's about the journalistic intent. So that's all I'm going to follow and do. And you love to see that. And my goodness, supporting cast, that is incredible. A bunch of just one-scene actors delivering some incredible stuff, just showing you the intensity and terrifyingness that is just a broken country. And that's what it is. It's not political in the sense of like, we're watching this big war between this side and that side, but you have a divided country, and we just see the people that are living their everyday lives in this divided country with what they believe in, which makes it really real and kind of scary in that capacity. Sometimes the script is really janky and feels very just like stiff, and some of the dialogue is very mixed, but I think that's the point. The reporters are like robots, essentially. They don't really get to feel, and they can't feel, so when they go through all this stuff, they can't really express opinion, and they don't really, and that's kind of an interesting thing to see. This movie, there's so much more I could probably say about it. The final moments, like the literal ending, are just really incredible to think about. The way it handles the action is truly incredible. Just the entire characteristics of just the small town, the big city stuff, there's nothing like it. It's truly a dystopian future that feels more prevalent now than it did maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It's crazy. And I kind of respect it for that. I know why it's not going to work for everybody, and I'm not going to be upset if anybody doesn't walk away thinking that this is a masterpiece. I don't know if it's a masterpiece. I would not go that far. But what this is accomplishing, what it is saying, what it is trying to say is the value of journalism in a broken world tells the truth in ways that we're not expecting. That's pretty cool. They're not pushy. They're not intrusive. They are just there to observe. And that either is scary, or it's honest, or it's both. And the cast, they present that very well. This is a good movie. It's very interesting. And if you want to think deeper on it, you can. If you don't want to think deeper on it, then what you really have is just a road trip to get to the president to figure out why the world is killing itself. So that's something, right? No, it's a great IMAX experience because everything pops and it looks beautiful and it's well directed. Garland knows how to make movies. It's a shame he doesn't really want to direct anymore, but I get it. I don't really know what you do after you say this. So, Civil War. I am going to give an 8 out of 10. Now, thank you all for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you could check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.